There's been a slight change in program since Bruno Kragic, our newly appointed Director General, was invited to an urgent meeting at the Ministry of Science and Education, and hopefully he will join us later. The colleague Filip Hameršak, who is a member of the Institute's Board of Directors, will take his place and moderate this session with me. In addition, other members of the Organizing and Program Committee, as well as other colleagues, are here with us both virtually and physically, and I'm sure that they will contribute to the lively and productive discussion. It is my great pleasure to welcome Naja Bentzen. Naja, hello.
Thank you. Hello.
As our first keynote speaker of today's afternoon session. Naja is a research analyst at the European Parliament's Liaison Office in Washington, D.C. Until recently, she worked in the External Policies Unit in the Members' Research Service of the European Parliamentary Research Service, where her work focused mainly on disinformation-related issues, as well as the Eastern Partnership countries. Naja will give a talk on the role of encyclopedias in an era of asymmetric digital knowledge. Naja, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm still in Denmark before I'll be flying to Washington early next week. But just before I start, a very quick disclaimer. What I say here today does not represent the official position of the European Parliament, nor the European Parliamentary Research Service, nor the European Parliament Liaison Office in Washington. So now that I have clarified that, let me start by congratulating you for the 70th anniversary, for organizing this conference despite the circumstances, and by thanking you for inviting me to speak about what I consider one of the most pressing issues of our time: access to reliable knowledge in an age of anti-enlightenment, and the role that online, general, verified encyclopedias can play for everyone who tries to navigate the ever-expanding ocean of information that we are facing every day. You may ask, if you're not too tired after today's presentations, how is this one of the most pressing issues of our times? What about COVID-19? What about the climate emergency? What about the future of democracy? And this is exactly the point. Protecting our collective infosphere, our knowledge ecosystem, and boosting what I like to call our collective cognitive resilience is a precondition for tackling all the other challenges that we in Europe and the rest of the world are facing today. So just to let you know what to expect from me today, I'll start by admiring the problem, so to speak. And before we all get too depressed, then I will start admiring the solutions in plural, and that is where collective cognitive resilience and access to Europe's encyclopedias come in. The pandemic has, as I said, accelerated a number of different trends that are linked to the overarching topic of access to verified knowledge in a digital age. And firstly, it's, let me just see if I can, yes. Firstly, it's exacerbating the information overload that many of us were already suffering from before the pandemic. Secondly, connected to this, it's fueling the spread of mis- and disinformation to an extent where the World Health Organization back in February declared a global infodemic. At the same time, the pandemic is accelerating inequality, both economic and social inequality, which leads to rifts and divisions that are even further deepened by inequality in terms of access to reliable quality information. So let me explain a little bit more in detail why these three issues matter for our information ecosystem, our digital infosphere, the way we consume information. The problem of information overload and massive amounts of mis- and disinformation has been rapidly accelerated by the pandemic, which has fueled our fear, our uncertainty, the lockdowns have also contributed to isolation and loneliness, which we know can make people more vulnerable to extremism. At the same time, many people have spent more time online, including on social media. Unlike previous pandemics, we exist in a world of instantaneous access to information, which is competing for our attention and flooding us from all sides via word of mouth, via social media, via traditional media, and also via health authorities and medical journals. In February, the World Health Organization warned that the pandemic had been accompanied by an infodemic, which it defined as an overabundance of information, some accurate and some not, that makes it hard for people to find trustworthy sources and reliable guidance when they need it. Most recently, last month, the WHO and the United Nations urged governments across the world to promote the timely dissemination of science-based information and prevent the spread of false information while respecting freedom of expression, very importantly. In the case of the current pandemic, changing knowledge about the virus has resulted in sometimes confusing guidelines, and there has been uncertainty about the usefulness of government action, as well as questions about the role of the WHO itself. And all this has led to confusion over what is truth and what is fiction, and made many people more susceptible to false information, including rumors, conspiracy theories, hoaxes claiming to offer a cure for the virus, as well as disinformation spread by malign actors with the intent to deceive people. As I said, the lockdowns have also increased the amount of time that we spend online, even if there are differences between generations in terms of how much more time we spend on which platforms, online video platforms, streaming or gaming platforms, social media, etc. This slide illustrates how Generation Z, young people between 16 and 23 years, have changed their online behavior during the pandemic. It shows that 51% of these young people said they consumed more online videos, 38% said they used more streaming services, and 31% increased their consumption of online gaming platforms. The information overload that I mentioned before is affecting our behavior and our capacity to process information. Research has found that the decline of our attention span is linked to the amount of information that we are exposed to. According to Microsoft, our attention span online was 13 seconds in 2000 and had declined to 8 seconds in 2013, so 7 years ago. So it's quite likely that the current infodemic will have further accelerated this trend by now as we speak. And that's bad news for facts, because emotions are better than facts at grabbing attention immediately and generating engagement. So emotional content tends to win over facts online. And this helps explain how we interact on social media, why it's easy to manipulate us, why we are prone to sharing false information ourselves, and why wedge issues that divide us, will continue to polarize our infosphere in the future. One such example is the question of vaccines. Even before the pandemic, we saw that Russian bots and trolls meddled not only in elections and political debates, but also in the public debate on vaccines in the US. They actively promoted both sides, both anti-vaxxers and pro-vaccine messages on the other side, to increase the rifts that already existed. In this way, they helped undermine public trust in official health advice and contributed to developing a health crisis. Again, before the pandemic, the World Health Organization had already warned that vaccination hesitancy had become one of the top threats to global health. And we see that the current politicization of vaccines is further contributing to confusion and vaccination hesitancy. That takes me to the third trend, inequality in terms of access to information. As I said, the pandemic has fueled economic and social inequality, which increases rifts in society, but it has also changed the advertisement market, benefiting the big online platforms, but leading to cuts in newspapers, to cuts in public service media. And at the same time, many governments across the world have used the pandemic to increase the pressure on media freedom. Regarding the role of the online platforms, which is very important, despite their attempts to promote reliable information instead of false information during the pandemic, with many of the platforms cooperating with the WHO, they still seem to be contributing to the problem rather than solving it. We saw that especially young people spend more time on online video platforms. During the infodemic, YouTube videos with false coronavirus information gathered more shares on social media than the videos of 5 leading news broadcasters combined. YouTube misinformation videos were shared nearly 20 million times on Facebook between October 2019 and June 2020. They had a higher reach on social media than the 5 largest English language news sources on YouTube: CNN, ABC News, BBC, Fox News, and Al Jazeera combined, whose videos were shared 15 million times. So YouTube misinformation videos were shared 20 million times on Facebook, compared to CNN, ABC News, BBC, Fox News, and Al Jazeera, whose videos were shared 15 million times in total. Facebook was the most popular platform for sharing YouTube misinformation videos, and the analysis showed that Facebook's third-party fact checks caught less than 1% of COVID-19 misinformation videos. Of course, the pandemic and the increasing inequality can likely lead to more polarization, new wedge issues. If we look at health-related topics, we've already discussed the issue of vaccine, which is divisive, but there are plenty of other issues that have the potential to increase already existing rifts and pit different groups against each other. And these wedge issues will mutate. New ones will appear from one minute to the next and dominate the debate as our global collective attention shifts. And this is the tricky part. Recent research has shown growing evidence that Americans are polarized not only in their views on policy, government, and society, but also about their perceptions of the same factual reality. So we have a number of actors who benefit economically or politically from digital anti-enlightenment, so to speak, from asymmetric access to knowledge, from amassing knowledge about us, collecting and monetizing our data, promoting emotional content in order to catch and keep our attention, or who benefit from polarizing the debate to fit certain narratives, to divide and conquer, to confuse us to an extent where we don't know anymore, to paraphrase George Orwell, if peace is indeed war, if freedom is indeed slavery, if ignorance is indeed strength. Already before the pandemic, the number of state actors who engage in computational propaganda was increasing. Last year, the Oxford Internet Institute found increasing social media manipulation by governments and political parties across the world. There was evidence of 7 states engaging in information operations targeting foreign audiences in 2019. Most of them, but not all of them, authoritarian states. But there were 10 times as many countries where these techniques were used to target domestic audiences. 70 countries in 2019, up from 28 in 2017. These actors learn from each other and they continue to develop their tools. They actually train other states' cyber troops, and in this way they export their techniques. In other words, there is no shortage of actors benefiting from anti-enlightenment. We could turn the question around and ask, who benefits from enlightenment? Who benefits from knowledge? Who benefits, as Diderot said, if our children, better instructed than we, may at the same time become more virtuous and happy? Obviously, the next generation needs to be better instructed and better informed in order to tackle the challenges of the future. The question is whether it's realistic to aim for enlightenment in this day and age if no one benefits financially. I leave that question open for the discussion and just say that democracy loses out if we cannot make informed decisions. Now, we've admired the problems, so before we all get too depressed, I'll move to the second part of the presentation, and to stay in the infodemic metaphor, we'll now look at some potential vaccines to counter digital anti-enlightenment. One of the phrases that I hear at every single conference, every single panel discussion, every single workshop about manipulation of our infosphere is that there is no silver bullet. It's true, but I think that this phrase reveals that the key problem of the interlinked challenges that we are facing, namely that it's not enough to react. It's not enough to load the gun with an imagined silver bullet and aim at one single problem. Our response or responses have to be as multifaceted, creative, and proactive as the challenges. So instead of searching for the silver bullet, we have to build up enough immunity to protect all of us from the erosion of our infosphere. And just as the baddies learn from each other and export their weapons of information manipulation to other countries, we need to fine-tune our inoculation methods and share them with like-minded democracies. The European Union has launched a comprehensive, holistic response to online disinformation, and most recently to the infodemic, which focuses a lot on awareness raising, on fact-checking, on support for media and media freedom, as well as on pushing the online platforms to take more responsibility for the role they play in our infosphere. During the pandemic, it has been easier for the online platforms to increase the findability and visibility of credible and verified information. This was something that the EU asked the online platforms to do already back in 2018. It has been easier during the pandemic because verified, authoritative information has been available via WHO and via national health authorities. But at the same time, we also know that known conspiracy theories promoting websites have seen more traffic than these authoritative sources. In the context of the corona crisis, the European Parliament in April called for a European information source providing verified, reliable content to citizens. And it has just last month created a special subcommittee to tackle disinformation. This was what the European Parliament called for in April was related to the pandemic, of course, but just as the novel coronavirus mutates, so do the infodemics, as I just said before. Other information crises will arise, and wedge issues related to history, politics, culture, society, religion, science will be weaponized in the future, and we have to prepare for that. Everything that can be used to divide us will be used. So we have to fill the gaps, we have to bridge the divides, and we have to boost shared realities, facilitate access to verified knowledge in order to counter anti-enlightenment and boost our collective cognitive resilience. In a world where shared realities are getting rare, we need a network of knowledge providers, trusted allies of reason. And trust is key here, because if we don't trust anything, we are easier to manipulate. We don't have to reinvent the wheel or build a compass from scratch to help us navigate. We already have tools that can contribute to virtuous circles of Bildung, as you can call it, to counter the downward spirals of anti-enlightenment. One of the components that already exist, at least partly in such a compass, in addition to many other components, are verified online encyclopedias in people's mother tongue. Very often, well-established national encyclopedias have very strong brands and are very easily recognizable by users. And that is very important when we navigate the tsunami of information that surrounds us, especially if we have very short attention spans. We know that many authoritarian regimes perceive Wikipedia as a threat, to an extent where Turkey blocked access to Wikipedia in all languages from 2017 to 2019, and China blocked access to Wikipedia in all languages last year. As I said, we are bombarded with information every day, so perhaps we have less time to proactively look for information ourselves. But if we do, many of us Google or YouTube. In Europe, our information infrastructure is completely dominated by Google. Google's market share in Europe lies at approximately 94% and has done so very consistently for years. But Google is not first and foremost a search engine. It's an advertisement company. Google advertising revenue contributed to over 80% of Alphabet's total revenue for 2019. So the popular belief that we can find any information we want via Google is a myth. Google promotes the sources that pay off in terms of ad revenue. As I said, Google is the gateway to knowledge in Europe, and knowledge is shared within language communities. Almost half of all Europeans do not speak a foreign language well enough to hold a conversation, so they depend on reliable sources in their mother tongue. The European Parliamentary Research Service published a briefing in 2018 and updated it the same year, looking at access to national online general encyclopedias in Europe. We looked only at the availability and we did not assess the quality. We simply looked at the presence or absence of national online general encyclopedias, and we also looked at the corresponding Wikipedia language versions. So let's start with our national online general encyclopedia landscape. A short disclaimer here, I don't speak all the languages in Europe myself, so this briefing is a joint work in progress. We haven't had the time to update it in 2019 or 2020, but please let me know if you have any questions or comments on the map or what I say. As you can see, we have used 4 different categories: free of charge in green, limited access in yellow, paywall red, and not existing in blue. First, we have a very big and very heterogeneous group of countries with free access to an online national encyclopedia. And when I say heterogeneous, the quality varies a lot, of course. But as I said before, we did not assess or analyze the quality. So I'll be the first to admit that this is a rather simplistic overview. The countries with free access to an online encyclopedia include Bulgaria, Croatia, France, the Czech Republic, Italy, Ukraine, Poland. Austria has a website called Austria Forum, and very different from that, Russia, for example, has the Great Russian Encyclopedia, which is the successor of the Great Soviet Encyclopedia. Lithuania has a universal encyclopedia. Latvia launched an all-new encyclopedia in 2018. In Norway, we have the Great Norwegian Encyclopedia published by a non-profit association, which is co-owned by 14 academic institutions and organizations, including all Norway's universities. The Danish National Encyclopedia is a special case. In 2017, the publisher announced that the online encyclopedia was no longer economically viable and stopped updating it. And since then, funding has been allocated by the Danish government to revamp and expand the platform, inspired by the Norwegian model, and it was launched in May this year. The second category is countries or language communities with limited access to a national online encyclopedia. Marked in yellow, we have Estonia. Then we have the United Kingdom, which is very tricky because Encyclopedia Britannica, the world's leading English language general online encyclopedia, is US American. But Encyclopedia Britannica has nevertheless been awarded a place among the top 10 UK super brands, despite being published by a US company. We've seen attempts to use Encyclopedia Britannica as a trustworthy source to provide an anchor of reliable knowledge on YouTube. I have my doubts about the willingness of users looking for video content to click on a link to written articles rather than videos, but it shows at least that there is awareness about the value of a brand like Encyclopedia Britannica. The third category is countries whose commercial online national encyclopedia has installed a paywall. They are marked in red. We have Germany, Brockhaus, which was taken over by the Swedish National Encyclopedin in 2015. Greece has a commercial encyclopedia which is struggling financially. The Netherlands also has a commercial encyclopedia with subscription-based access. In Spain, the online version of the Great Spanish Encyclopedia also requires a subscription to access the content. The Swedish language encyclopedia is owned by a private company which has expanded its activities to Germany, as I said, as well as Austria and Switzerland through an exclusive license agreement with Brockhaus. Then we have the last category marked in blue, countries or language communities with no national online encyclopedia as far as we could see when we looked: Belgium, Finland, where only the Swedish-speaking minority has access to a not very comprehensive online encyclopedia. We have Iceland, Hungary, Portugal, Slovakia and Romania. In Belarus, an encyclopedia from the 90s has been put online, but the content is not updated. We were not able to identify national online encyclopedias in Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Albania and Turkey. I often hear that it's not a problem not to have a national online general encyclopedia because we all have Wikipedia, right? But let's look at what the different language communities can access on Wikipedia. At first sight, it looks impressive. Wikipedia has about 300 active language versions, and wikipedia.org is the 13th most popular website in the world. But there are significant differences between what people can access in their mother tongue in Wikipedia. So let's look at the versions of languages spoken in Europe. The biggest language version is, of course, the English one with over 6 million articles. Swedish speakers have 3.6 million articles, followed by 2.4 million German articles, over 2 million French and Dutch, 1.6 million Russian, Italian, and Spanish language articles, 1.4 million Polish, 1 million in Ukrainian, same number in Arabic, almost 1 million Portuguese, and then the numbers decrease, 600,000 in Serbian, 460,000 articles in Hungarian, 360,000 in Turkish, 220,000 in Danish and Croatian, 180,000 in Greek, 100,000 in Macedonian and Latvian, and 80,000 in Albanian. Logically, the lower the number of articles, the more likely users are to prefer a different language version than their mother tongue. This is the case in Croatia, Estonia, Denmark, Greece, Latvia, Slovenia, and Romania, as well as in Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Serbia. This creates a gap between well-educated users with good foreign language skills and those who are not able to hold a conversation in another language than their mother tongue, which is about half of all Europeans, as I said before. At the same time, research suggests that the number of edits in an article is linked to its credibility. So very generally speaking, the higher the number of edits, the higher the credibility. A low number of articles also suggests a low number of editors. So if you have a low number of articles and thus a low number of editors, you're also likely to have low reliability. I know that many Danish language articles on Wikipedia are stubs, which are machine translated from Swedish, for example. So the quality is very, very low. So as you can see, we have significant gaps in Europe. We have not looked into the online encyclopedia landscape in other continents, apart from a very brief look at China, where authorities have blocked access to Wikipedia in all languages in China. At the same time, Beijing seems to be involved in an increasing number of quite nasty edit wars on Wikipedia, including regarding articles on controversial issues such as Taiwan and the Hong Kong protests. And Beijing has hired 20,000 people to work on an online version of the country's first national encyclopedia to compete with Wikipedia and other online Chinese language encyclopedias published by private companies. The editor-in-chief of the project has called it a great wall of culture. Information wars or manipulation of online platforms are not new, but I think that the blocking of Wikipedia by countries such as Turkey and China, the heated edit wars on Wikipedia, as well as the value that China and Russia attach to their own territories of truth or great walls of culture, signify that this type of content is increasingly perceived as crucial by non-democratic state actors. I think that this is one more reason for democracies to pay very close attention to not only the findability of quality content, as the EU has called on the online platforms to ensure, but also the availability of it. We should ensure that the very existence of such content, including reliable, verified online encyclopedias. At the moment, there is very little awareness about this. And this takes me back to my point of the departure, the so what? Apart from all the baddies, of course, who cares about access to general interest knowledge? Why does it matter today? Why does it matter for democracy? We know that facts and evidence, expertise and science are under pressure. Some of the pressure is strategic. Some of the pressure is systemic. Some of the pressure comes from the industry monetizing our online behavior. Just like truth and trust go hand in hand, so do knowledge and power. But the phrase knowledge is power can mean very different things. In authoritarian systems, it means controlling access to information, often violating freedom of expression, which also includes the freedom to form our opinions. For the tech industry, it means controlling access to our data, and it means monetizing our public debate. In an open democracy, knowledge shared is power multiplied. We want to base our opinions on facts instead of basing our facts on opinions. We need shared realities, we need shared facts, we need shared knowledge in order to make informed democratic decisions. This is the only way that we can solve all the other burning issues that we are facing today. We need both a moral and a factual compass to do that. Ray Bradbury said that you don't have to burn books to destroy a culture. Just get people to stop reading them. In the same vein, you don't have to destroy knowledge to undermine democracies. You just have to make people stop using the knowledge that we have already accumulated. It's already happening on several fronts, and countering that requires an all-hands-on-deck approach. And we need the knowledge infrastructure to support these efforts. For what does it help that Encyclopedia Britannica Online or other verified general encyclopedias with a great and trusted brand contain credible and reliable articles unless they surface when we Google? The challenges, as I have attempted to outline here, are not new, but they have become more visible during the pandemic. The infodemic indeed represents a unique window of opportunity because the increased focus on the challenges also helps shine a light on some of the tools we already have at our disposal to counter the downward spirals of anti-enlightenment and update or revamp a compass that helps us navigate the ever-expanding ocean of information that surrounds us with currents that confuse us and undercurrents that attempt to mislead us. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions and comments.
The online Encyclopedia European landscape, as we are already familiar from your document, as you know that we already know about it and read it. So although you said that you do not represent an official stand of the European Parliament, but still European Parliament published this document here. So does this give us some kind of hope that they are aware of this very important role that online encyclopedia in native languages could play in the fight?
Yes, well, I think that there is some awareness about it, but I think it is still considered, this is just my personal opinion, I think it is still considered a very, very soft underlying issue. So I sometimes have the feeling that it's easier to find support for the more reactive measures, the harder tools that we can apply. I think that we need everything. This is why I'm focusing a lot on the soft sides of the toolbox that we indeed need to apply. This is also why I said that I started out by saying that we need a multifaceted response. Of course, we also need the tougher response. We need to call out, we need to name and shame, and we need maybe to be a little bit tougher on that side. But we also need to boost the very basis of our, what I call our cognitive, collective cognitive resilience, and that includes online encyclopedias. But as I said, it's a soft issue, and that is one of the challenges of tackling a multifaceted or multifaceted challenges, is that you have to involve many different sectors. You have to involve many different policy areas, and that can be very difficult. But the European Union and the European Parliament are, I think, working in the right direction. So there is greater acknowledgement of the fact that we really need to look at the challenges from a holistic point of view.
And one more question from my side. In one of the emails that you sent me this spring or summer, early summer, I think you mentioned this April resolution, and you mentioned it today as well.
Yeah.
And in which European Parliament stresses that disinformation about COVID-19 at this time is major public health problem, and urges the EU to establish a European information source in all the official languages to ensure that all citizens have access to accurate and verified information. Does it really, mean that encyclopedia, do this include encyclopedias as well, or what do you think? What would this information source would be according to you?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I think that what the EU institutions have done during the infodemic is they have published a lot of information about the pandemic, and I think that is, of course, great. It's great to publish information, reliable and trustworthy information about the pandemic. It's great to highlight reliable sources and also work together with the UN, for example. And this is also something that the European Union has done. In terms of publishing a new information source focusing on one particular problem, it could be beneficial. I think personally that, as I said, we need to use the brands and the well-known sources that are already there as well. Because if you start Googling something divisive and you don't know which source to click on, and you don't recognize a new source, for example, then I think that it might not be as successful as if you already know the source. But as we have seen, not all countries have reliable, easily recognizable information sources or sources of verified knowledge. So of course that's a challenge. But as I said, I think that it's great to promote reliable and verified authoritative knowledge, but I think we have to really be realistic about the attention span. And if we introduce new sources, I think we risk losing people because they don't know the source. If you understand my line of thinking.
Yeah, and now I would like to open the floor for other comments or questions.
Nataša, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I have first I would like to just say that I have picked up several keywords from your presentation. So those are public trust, computational propaganda, anti-enlightenment, infodemic, truth decay, and even the Great Wall of Culture. So those are all worrying keywords, so to say. You have also said that new generation has a very short span of time that they want to concentrate on a certain content. From my point of view, we also are seeing more and more that grandchildren are teaching their parents or their grandfathers and grandmothers how to use technology. So we have the reversed situation in the teaching process, so to say. So you have also mentioned that we need to teach the new generation Z on the processes of fact-checking and the value of fact-checking, while their appeal more lies to the emotional side and the social networks. So how to best marry those two requirements? I would like to ask you, so how do you see the role of institutions like Lexicographic Institute, even other information institutions like archives, libraries, and museums? What type of digital transformation, since they need to undergo, since they are a large and usually a little bit slow institutions to change into digital age? So what would be your suggestion how to bridge this new and very challenging gap?
Well, I think that if I may ask, if I may start with your comment on the attention span and grandchildren teaching their grandparents digital literacy. I think it's not only the younger generation that has a short attention span, and that we all, it's actually, most people think that we have to teach young people how to navigate in the digital infosphere. But I think that it's well known that the older generation is more susceptible to so-called fake news. So they are more trusting online, so they more often actually risk spreading false information than the younger generation who are more digital savvy. So of course we need to, if we only target our media literacy initiatives to the younger generation, we risk losing the older generation if the older generation doesn't communicate with their grandchildren. But there are actually initiatives also targeting the older generation. I know a few, but not a lot. But I think this is actually one of the the issues that we would have to focus more on, to target not only the young generation, because we also need, I mean, middle-aged people can also be susceptible, and research has also shown that the susceptibility to false information does not necessarily correspond with the education level. So people who are well educated also might think that they are so knowledgeable about everything that they of course would never fall for false information, but they do. So we have to be very aware, everyone has to be very aware of our own weaknesses. Regarding the role of encyclopedias, of museums and libraries, public libraries, it's very difficult for me to provide a quick fix. Of course, I think that we have some very good examples of if you read the briefing, you will also see that there are a few very good examples of online encyclopedias where they play a role in the public debate, where they are present on social media, for example, where they are actively engaging in discussions. Of course, they cannot be perceived as being politically biased. That's very clear. That's very, very important that they're not. At the same time, I think that we demand a lot of public libraries, for example, and it's extremely difficult for them with the funding cuts that are currently. Everyone is paying lip service to public libraries and saying how important they are for the Bildung in their countries, but in fact they are really under pressure to perform, even if they are constantly having to cut back on everything. So a quick fix would be to provide reliable funding to them so that they can actually start working in the right direction and fulfill the requirements of today.
I totally agree, and thank you for this comment, because I can see that, for example, from the perspectives of archives, which is my sort of field of interest and research. On the one hand, there is still a lot of analog materials that is there and that is not going to go away. And still there is, as one of the previous speakers from previous session has mentioned, a big amount of big data that is coming our way, whether we are archive or encyclopedic or lexicographic institution. So this is something that is going to be an additional challenge. So it is not something that we can say, okay, so we have 100% of personnel now, we will switch 50% to this new role. No, I think that we will need additional people with the new knowledges and new skills, not only informatics, but information specialists as well. So this is something that, in my opinion, is needed. And I think that key stakeholders in the European Union need to recognize this fact and actually allow a little bit more of financing for all those institutions in order for them to be able to perform how we actually expect them to do. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And I also think that one has to be aware of the fact that if the information is not available in our mother tongue, languages are actually more at risk of dying. And it goes really, really fast. So if you don't have the information available online, you do risk that the language will die out, and it goes really, really fast. So that awareness should also, of course, be raised. But I think it's quite difficult at the moment to make people and policy makers aware of the actual risk of also losing languages even in the European Union.
Yes, you are really true on this. This could also be seen from the effects of, for example, from the research field, where we are all tending to publish in English language, not in our native languages, because of various reasons. And this is also a threat. But I think that we may be close to our time, so I'll rest with my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hrvoje. Are there any more questions, maybe? Comments? Well, just let me ask you briefly, Naja, with your new role in European Parliament in Washington, what will this new role entail? Will you still be at the forefront of the fight against fake news in favor of encyclopedias, sources of trusted and verified knowledge?
I hope so. I certainly hope so. I have. It's a little bit difficult for me to go into detail about my future role because I have not physically arrived in Washington yet. But I have already agreed with my future director that I will continue to focus on disinformation-related issues, and I will definitely also continue to focus on online encyclopedias and the important role that you play.
Well, thank you so much for taking part in this conference and for sharing your views, and hopefully see you next year in Zagreb when we organize the second European online encyclopedia, which was.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for your attention.